Then suddenly the gym fell quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. And standing next to Mrs. McClure, looking completely mortified, was John Turlock. Mrs. McClure was scouring the crowd with her eyes, looking very uncomfortable too. What happened? I whispered to Darla. No one's bidding, she whispered back. Do I hear 10? Called Mrs. McClure. Come on, out there. This lunch is delicious. Strawberry tarts, roast beef, and Minster cheese sandwiches. Oh no, I whispered to Darla. I can't believe I did this to him. You? What did you do? I voted for him. Well, you couldn't have been the only one. Well, why isn't anyone bidding on him? He's so nice. Darla nodded. Exactly. That's when I realized what I had to do. My hand shot into the air and I called, 10. 10? Warbled Mrs. McClure. Did I hear 10? I put my hand up higher and said to Darla, said 12. What? Said 12. I'll beat you. No way, Darla, he can't go for 10, come on. 12. Darla called, but her hand didn't go up very high. 15, I cried. 16, called Darla, and eyed me with a laugh. I whispered, Darla, I've only got 15. Her eyes got enormous. I laughed and called, 18, then held her arm down and said, but that really is all I've got. There was a moment of silence and then, 18 going once, 18 going twice, sold. For $18. Darla laughed and said, oh girl, what a rush. I nodded. Yes, it was. Well, no dessert for you. Looks like you got cleaned out by something a little more nutritious. She nodded toward the stage. You gotta go up to the table like you're supposed to? Or you gonna stick around and see the carnage? I almost didn't have a choice. Before Mrs. McClure could say 2 words about Bryce or his basket, Shelley called, 10. Then from the middle of the gym came 20. It was Miranda Humes, with her hand way in the air. They went back and forth, higher and higher, until Shelley called, 62. I can't believe it, I whispered to Dora. $62. Come on, Miranda, come on. I think she's out. Shelley's got it. $62 going once, cried Mrs. McClure. But before she could say going twice, a voice from the back of the gym called, 100. Everyone gasped and turned around to see who had called the bid. Darla whispered, It's Jenny. Atkinson? I asked. Darla pointed, right over there. She was easy to spot, standing tall above the others in the number 7 basketball jersey she almost always wore. Wow, I whispered. I had no idea. Maybe she'll slam dunk him for you. Darla said with a grin. Who cares? I giggled. She slam dunked Shelley. Mrs. McClure was gushing into the microphone about the record-breaking bid when a big commotion broke out over by Miranda. I spotted Shelley's hair, and my first thought was that there was going to be a fight. But instead, Shelley and Miranda turned to face Mrs. McClure and called, 122.50. I choked down a cry. What? They're teaming up, Darla whispered. Oh, no, no, no. I looked over Jenny's way. Come on, Jenny. Darla shook her head and said, She's through. And she was. Price went to Shelley and Miranda for $122.50. It was a little strange, meeting up with John and walking over to the multi-purpose room for lunch. But he was just so nice, and I think grateful that by the time we got situated at our table, I wasn't feeling so awkward or silly. It was just lunch. Things would have been easier if they hadn't seated me in direct view of Bryce and his little harem, but I did my best to ignore them. John told me all about this radio-controlled airplane that he and his dad were building from scratch, and how he'd been working on it for nearly 3 months. And that over the weekend they were finally going to get to try it out. He told me a funny story about soldering the wires wrong and practically starting a fire in their basement. And I asked him about how a radio-controlled airplane works because I didn't really understand it. So I'd relaxed a lot and was actually having a good time eating lunch with John. And I was so relieved that I hadn't beat on Bryce. What a fool I would have made of myself. Watching Shirley and Miranda fawning all over him didn't bother me nearly as much as I thought it would. Really, they looked ridiculous. John asked about my family, so I was telling him about my brothers and their band when a huge commotion broke out over at Bryce's table. Suddenly, Shelley and Miranda were rolling on the floor like an enormous furball, smearing each other with food. Out of nowhere, Bryce appeared at our table. He grabbed at my hand. He grabbed my hand, pulled me a few feet away, and whispered, "Do you like him?" I was stunned. He held my other hand and asked again, "Do you like him?" "You mean John?" "Yes." I can't remember what I said. He was looking into my eyes, holding my hands tight, and then he began pulling me toward them. My heart was racing and his eyes were closing and his face was coming toward mine, right there, in front of all the other basket boys and their dates and the others. He was gonna kiss me.